sight. And when you pull in your net, I'll be taken and not cast back in the sea. The sea, we ate your body, found power in your blood, and now in gratitude we ourselves are an offering at your table. We ourselves are yours. When you call me, Lord Jesus, I'll be yours.
Act Two, January 1941, location, Etel Monastery, near Oberammergau, Bavaria.
And if that other face of man, manly worshipped, should not cope or were defiled, the desires of millions would also falter. Surprising none, the face, as all such faces do, beguiles and will not substitute. And refusals of the face landed self-inflicted wounds, we found. Should the face break down, the victories and profound talk cannot be repaired. How, in these unusual times, strength of the negative to express joy? At that, those repugnant questions somehow give utterance to the worst corner of our hopes. Who is valuable? Who isn't? Another momentum to flow, as though God chose to test us through one more choice, which we, so amateur, must consider.
Murder, an act of the cryptic, famous. It came, and it comes with less effort than a song to raise the rest of morning, wise and playfully done.
Murder, sharper than any doubt or confused passion, does not leave an abstruse line. Murder, the avowed apostle of mute clarity and loud night.
Then history, then joined to the mad crowd, to be obscene. The old spirit explained away and coined as past, the gently old parting first.
They're the least aware, the least in place, in the midst of thirst.
So many drawn to profess a bond with the devil who sleeps through din and wakes for chaos.
And still, as peace was inert and disguised as coy, they didn't even try to take it seriously, but hastened away in bliss to convert old trust and grace into weaker names.
Are we arranged in case this latest evilist tells us how to lie? Are we sensible enough to move safely out of the way? I watched him closely to see if he would talk back like an angry boy, having bluffed and notched all those who unify under him. But as for the moment, a murder does not assure days of persistent ease. For it is not murder he wants, though murder, like theater, brings an answer and an applause. Inside his own special pit, and thus inside his own special fault, then at last he finally knows, after all the fuss, that murder only looks like theater. So many suggest we should play the fanatic's game for the fanatic's tale of belying, of molding parts that rage to the beat of kill. In the heart of an enfolding and secret rage are unsatisfied but extreme views.
Two fists begin to grab for the same in prime state, and both come back with unique and dissimilar handfuls in a rush.
It's all too close. Like someone who will not leave you alone, who asks for grandiose schemes. Anything passing close as a sign for venue, altogether unrehearsed, will appeal, of course, as little else can.
To watch and to stand against which we judge all things, a couple of predatory sounds, then screams accuse, someone soft excuses, for the raw and the loud, any rant, and tries to temper tragedians who do not hush or pair the vows of incorrection or sin for the mass mind.
In 1941, Hans von Donau, with Bonhoeffer's participation, heads an effort to use Jews in the Abwehr, allowing them to escape Germany through Switzerland and then disappear. A program known as Operation 7. The final solution, as envisioned by the Nazis, meant the total elimination of all Jews in Europe. Extermination facilities at Auschwitz are ordered to be established in early summer of 1941, and the gas chambers there were to be built so that 2,000 persons could be killed at one time rather than the 200 killed in each gas chamber at Treblinka. On June 22, 1941, Hitler's guns along hundreds of miles of Russian borders start the German campaign against the Soviet Union. But by mid-October, the Germans are stuck in the mud. By the summer of 1941, the conspirators' work accelerates with greater optimism for an overthrow of the Nazis. But Winston Churchill and Anthony Eden in Britain dismissed the role of resistance in Germany, of which Bonhoeffer and the conspirators are a part. Act 3, December 1941, location Klein-Crossen Estate near Kickau, Germany. Bonhoeffer convalesces from pneumonia.
I was cut, roughly from a rough source and authorship, and stood up like a part of damnation to witness the coarse and unholy soldiers take others with impunity. At the time, thinking of everything I would do if they happened to lurch a move my way. And amid survival and guilt, there's a seizure and no choice. Even then, how we try to prove that we own something of ourselves. How I now reach to hide in cowardice that something I reluctantly call my own. Gar nicht.
For so long as I had wanted to be left to myself, yet seconds passed headlong like stones resounding against the chamber of my skull until I realized I was all alone. And none by their own will could now come back to confuse us with the innocence of an old life. Desperation in a lonely room stirred like acid as it burned away in my blood. And I could not think of myself any longer but lustily to focus on a fierce pain. It was not a link to insanity, but to grief, as I thought of silly things, an iron wrinkle of a distant aunt's smile and disbelief, and the twitch in my uncle's step, a path I had lost a long time ago, a niche that mattered so little that it was not even a memory, some who were not friends at all, but a fitful and bruised half of an incomplete thought. I no longer proceeded with anyone whom history could have judged slightly relevant to the acceded prevailing course. No, none to interfere with content while the new front rearranged shapes.
An innocent torn apart without regard for his thoughts, his being caught in the first column of first plunder, by shadowy winks, by guilt or by eloquence, whether by shift or by a shot in a ravine, death is death. Dietrich, you're so brave you don't have patience with the rest of us wandering.
Ritual melts into an accusation. For now, I'll be remembered for yielding to a whiff of power I didn't respect, though I'm more parts of a scheme than I am of myself.
Only for those imagined things which, held by us, can't use any other description do we save the word love. Now, it's safeless and harder and mostly steeper than with quaint times when we gave brittle, perfect little things the title of love. The original time I heard, you talked, Dietrich, and measured like there were no questions or disputes. You were immersed, as people are when they wait for one power to intimate them to another plane that's possible and irregular. I wanted more than your silence.
There's this illusion to think that the drape of a form shields us from the gathering heat. But it's just an old shirt of torn fields we continue to wear, no matter where we happen to be.
It's for love that we will suffer and cheat so much. Then with one stare, we wish to apply no farther than the initial contact of an eye, maybe noting nothing at all. A formidable clan of numbness, featured quickly into a guided and tempting side of a lover, as though a shrewd disease that cannot rightly satisfy itself until it has secretly invaded another body.
A choice cannot be borrowed any more than happiness can. Though we listen for a voice, so to lose our own as if it were never ours to have.
I've watched you wait now, Dietrich, and muse about other times, your brooding times, to change the times when change magnified the worst parts of us.
It's a matter that many had come around to hear you talk for no other absurd reason than they would believe in everything you might say. You had hope for a while, as hope will always conceive of certainty by believing solely in itself.
A self-vision locked inside a silent dream is altogether a desire for power.
To learn to be clear, than to hide an idea in a wasteland of gray. I catch myself here wishing to be profound, but the few decent ideas I have left lie garbled between a question and my last utterance simply at play. If vague, I can't trust myself. I'm alone in many words to be sustained or to deny the non-effect they have. I yet will follow the chart of those words wherever they take me, for they are set as mine in a sea of currency and consequence. But imprisoned by my own obscurity and estimate, I resign myself to be both victim and the molder of unshaped peace.
The police did come. We counted that they had more rights over us than we had over ourselves. No one stood, nothing was said. We looked at one another as though we wanted someone among us who was misled to betray each of us before we did it one to the other. To flaunt, to save myself and you, Dietrich, you, from the brutal and blunt conceits that ask for a dishonest reply. I watched your heroic sweat confront its mission. It's like your blood, so rash and too hot to shun the chill and turn of conscience. You didn't laugh enough to be taken seriously. Can you find friends and friendship to know others will give you sympathy? The beginning of country, if we could be so discreet, can it be of radiance or merely patriotic? Thinks do think. The more powerful the largest crowd, less true the loudest thing it says.
The enemy and I, we construed each other into apostasy and did not fall for each other's story. None of us could any longer be well guarded again. No, they looked at hands to find soft spots, and at our undiscarded clothes to confirm if someone more malevolent and well-arranged could be present. The enemy waited in a corner and conceded, saying nothing, till silence strengthened their heedless stock. I would keep thinking how the silent event and obedience disclosed so much more than we wanted to reveal, even more by gesture than by anything any of us could have exposed or confessed.
A promised system, pray tell, shouldn't rise so cruel in its effect.
The citizens awake to well-worn stealth, and then they defer in acquiescence. Or they then exploit the weakness to be transformed in brief into a hidden power of vogue greatness.
The police, in time, relied on us to finish an imposed and elemental lie. If we fought, we gave them the brief excuse, the best excuse to consume us. But if we submitted and bought the reign, it spread the admission of guilt. Was ist los?
I watched pleasure rise from subtle to heavy until they set us efficiently and notched us into their pattern. Whether we had changed or lied held no relevance. Force seized them into one tragic and illicit life, functions in the range of a surge by delusion and of regardless conduct. They told us we'd break apart in this world, for we were ruined by all apparent and bold happenings and could not overcome ideas that were too fragile in a fight that does not wait, either on some ethic that serves itself or on one of us moving toward a reason no one but ourselves who are left behind can understand.
On December 7th, 1941, Hitler issues a night and fog decree. Anyone jeopardizing German security is to vanish without a trace into the night and fog of unknown areas of Germany. And no information is to be provided to the families of those who vanish. In the beginning of 1942, a meeting of the Nazi senior officials is called in the Berlin suburb of Wannsee to discuss how the final solution can be accomplished. At around the same time, the number of persons and groups involved in Germany in opposition to Hitler and the Nazi government grow. Bonhoeffer states on more than one occasion that a coup can only begin with the death of Adolf Hitler. Act 4, April 1942, the Bonhoeffer family home, Marienberger Allee 43, Berlin, Germany. Bonhoeffer sits alone at his writing table.
Like children, there were others who dozed and could not recognize the world in which they were abiding. Still others who chose to rise and dismiss it and try to direct, by conscious copy, existence falsely in a false phase or fantasy. And all the subtlety wore thin around the worn, and many responded to nothing unless it led to the obviously angry. Unstopped, they could not let doubt stress a blank sheet against which to draw and to set the best of themselves. Revolution, their pleasure for which they groped, and perhaps which was even briefly the value they understood to be themselves. The revolution to do evil and save illusion that would be obvious to everyone, and for the perpetrator, splendid. Have the revolutionists been more successful at anything than the overthrow of a sad old system? And if not, do they have anything more to be proud of than the degree of grand skill it took to establish a new savage? The success to employ a demonic threat expertly by undoing our possibility bit by bit until it disappears into the hunger that's teased and fed by making it more unfed. As they confer violence onto every part, as violence so numbly institutes the deeply undiluted storm they possess, every act stirs the dream to crude completion. And if some trust us sacredly, and we then commit murder, many may even think it's but our own loose form of justice. The church puts on its lyric and hands in its pockets and pulls out the best it has and gives its agents frayed slight benefit to apply and handle. The threads shortly wear out. Within its composure, what does the church choose? If its intent were union, it couldn't survive then solely being the church. If it chose to revive through the snare of prior charms, yes, it endures, but just so long as we don't decide it fosters a relentless tale. The institution deems to persist on the glory it has known, while the church lately redesigns regimes and twice merits its profits in a venomous pact for the current lines of its retreat. Yet the church cannot fail forever. It's a certain part of recall, and will rise to overwhelm the speed and end of decay near the destiny of pure water in original rights.
On April 26, 1942, the Reichstag passes a new law imparting to Hitler absolute power of life and death over every German, and suspends any laws that serve as an obstacle to the fulfillment of the provisions of the law. The following month, Bonhoeffer takes a hurried trip to Stockholm to meet with his friend and colleague, Anglican Bishop George Bell, and to request the British government not attack Germany in case of a coup against Hitler. At the meeting, Bonhoeffer also provides to Bell a list of German military leaders whose units would initiate a coup against Hitler. A few weeks later, Bell meets with Anthony Eden to discuss the information furnished by Bonhoeffer on internal German conditions, including plans for a coup. Eden expresses deep concerns that Bonhoeffer may be used by the Nazis. Act 5, June 1942, Rothersgaus, Freiburg, Germany.
Was it simply the allure of calm as the evilist did select the smoothest steps to withdraw himself, either from exposure or from options? After antagonism had filled his mouth greedily with special and raw themes at the very time he was most convincing, I couldn't fight him face to face without a ready crime of always thinking of him to be everything outside of myself. He stayed a damaged clue, caught in my own defense.
I would have lied then to save myself, not even splendidly, but by lore or something very meager or less. I realize daily, almost blindly, that a gift from God is the eager cleverness to stay alive. The changes, all changes, unwelcome changes, escalate a little each time we arrive at a new hero.
But do many conspire for vaunted expressions in the street? When troops wait noisily in an attire of conviction for someone to meet them like most will, for a lover who's been away for love's sake? The upbeat women wanting to welcome soldiers, and the children were owned by the colors. And odd men were afraid of rumors they'd one day join the ranks. And while soldiers gathered, a reason or two to be proud. For they had made a completely new world, and they could swiftly introduce most to its pleasures. But they wished to blame us for our role, degrading a report on their blunt practice. One man, even with a cheer, can't lift the contents unless it's someone like you, Dietrich, who has the will to break the forms and let the dense energy run out like fire over a frayed and colorless cloth.
A soldier means little, but for the legion's approval standing behind him, he can create no elegant scenes, nor a sequence further than the world he protects. Yet, at times, the blood roars, justice declines into a curled, an unemployed phrase.
To conclude that no force exists without help, even passively, from the people it governs, and as such, the flow of government critiques the costs of our human failures in laws to protect us, one from the other. Here it touts enough lies to let us be innocent of sin. Everyone wants to be moral. Even the murderer feels best if he knows he's killed a favored prey to gather laurels he sought to find.
And old men in town talked about things to say, as they couldn't have sung smugly of their future. We knew the time string made no sense without them. Without every siren or lure, each old soul could reduce to a watchful chant. Dietrich. Old men needing less freedom than they often had if they're going to be freer than they are. For I was young, so a new world could vow a new credo. A new credo made believable soon. I must have found events leading to revolution were done so with our crimes, not daring in mind. And an old man reflecting the one town, reflecting also the exaggerated myth of an old nature, stopped short to shout at the day. Is it within the failing that frailty is again going to lead us? And he'd sit and direct while he said,